At the beginning of 2022, these were the 5 richest people in the world: Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Bernard Arnault, Bill Gates, and Larry Page. Most of these ultra-rich billionaires have lost money this year, tens of billions of dollars, except for one, Gautam Adani. The Indian billionaire got $51 billion richer in 2022 alone, fast-tracking him to be among the 4 richest people on the planet.
The kind of rise that you have seen is truly phenomenal and probably unprecedented in the world, that in such a short time, a single individual has been able to acquire assets across industrial sectors and has emerged as one of the largest billionaires in the world.
The rise of Gautam Adani to being the richest man in Asia in 2022 is staggering. It is staggering in its speed, and it is staggering in the magnitude of the wealth being accumulated by one individual. It also is the hallmark of the increasing wealth disparity of the world. We can't continue to have such an enormous concentration of wealth in the hands of only a couple of individuals.
First off, who is Gautam Adani? Adani serves as the chairman and founder of Adani Group, an Indian multinational conglomerate. Coming from a middle-class family background, Adani began his entrepreneurial journey in Mumbai's diamond industry in the late 70s.
Gautam Adani is a very astute businessman, and when you look at his empire today, it spans everything from power generation, coal, gas, renewable energy, grid transformation, ports, and literally almost every industry in India.
His wealth today is derived really from his stock market valuations of the companies, and that is why he has skyrocketed to the very top and near the very top of even global tables.
Surging energy prices and soaring valuations of Adani's 7 publicly traded companies has added more than $50 billion to his net worth this year.
Surprisingly, despite the sharp rise in the Adani companies, you will hardly find any analysts having a formal coverage of the Adani stocks, which is extremely surprising because companies of this size should normally be covered by a whole host of analysts. So this spectacular rise in share prices of the Adani company has really happened with a very narrow and institutional investor holding.
Critics argue that Gautam Adani's rising wealth has a lot to do with his friendship with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. They say it may have helped him win several government contracts. In February 2019, Adani Group won the contracts to run airports in 6 major Indian cities, despite having no previous experience running airports. Now, Adani Group is the largest airport operator in India.
It's just amazing how one individual always seems to get the vast majority of the great contracts in India. And Gautam Adani also has a rather unusual knack of being able to say, well, heads he wins, tails you lose. And by that I mean when a contract goes in his favour, he gets all of the rewards. When the contract goes against him, it either gets set aside, it gets ignored, or it gets rewritten. And so when you've got that ability and you can throw in financial leverage in there, then at the end of the day, it's a riskless profit trade.
In some ways, it is very similar to the oligarchs in post-Soviet Russia who overnight became extremely wealthy with the privatization of the former Soviet state. So they emerged because of having very close access to the ruling leaders. And in some ways, we are seeing the same kind of development in India. It is not really because of true free enterprise, but because they get access and they get concessions and get favored treatment from the state. It is this context that you have to also see the rise of Adani in the Indian economy.
India added 40 billionaires in 2021, climbing to the 4th spot on the billionaire list with a total of 124. Germany, China, and the US are ahead of it.
Recent studies project a rise in the number of millionaires and billionaires in India. This can be thought of as part of the economic success side of the story of India over the past few decades. There is a growing entrepreneur class and a middle class, and they are accumulating wealth. The current administration in India has also promoted free market policies. They have been pro-economic growth and pro-market reforms.
A unique feature of the Indian economy is having a more than averagely educated middle class. They often speak English. They are very educated in sciences and so on. And so that had contributed to creating a world-class industries such as in pharma specifically and in the information technology. Adani, among many other billionaires, benefit from this resource that lacks in many other markets.
The ongoing war in Ukraine has also allowed India to keep buying Russian energy at a discount, despite criticism from Western countries. Indian officials say they need to keep buying Russian oil to help keep inflation at bay. That cheap energy is helping fuel a faster pace of economic growth in India compared to the wider global economy, which could soon fall into a recession. The geopolitical tensions between China and the US could also be indirectly helping India's economy.
It's riding on geopolitical tailwind because it's escalation of tensions between the US and China and increasingly the West and China. And India straddles in this neutral ground that it likes to stay in, and that is going to be beneficial.
In this context, you are seeing some of the US and other global players looking at India to invest in, as well as entrepreneurs of India. And Adani is one of those.
If you're American investors and you're looking for 1.4 billion people to sell your product to, there's only one choice in the world, it's India, and India embraces foreign investment. Western companies have actually allied with Gautam Adani to tap into the wealth, because at the end of the day, when you're going into a foreign country, you do need to have on the ground, politically well-connected business people who are astute, and certainly Adani ticks all of those boxes. So he's been sort of the biggest beneficiary of the opening up of the financial system in India to Western capital.
On one hand, you're seeing India's producing more billionaires, and on the other hand, you're finding that the developmental index, India is faring, much poorly than what it was earlier, which is a straight contradiction. And the only way one can explain that contradiction is that it is because the government strategies and policies has actually caused this. And that is the real reason.
Discussion over wealth inequality in capitalist countries isn't new. For example, the US has the highest number of billionaires in the world, and the richest 10% of Americans held nearly 70% of US wealth in 2021. The wealthiest 10% of Indians held 77% of the country's total national wealth in 2021.
And in India, you find that even though the pie is growing very rapidly, the inequality in terms of the distribution is very unequal. So you can have a situation like you do where, the richest are growing their wealth very rapidly because of the underlying strength of the economy. But at the other end of the coin, those at the bottom level of, the wealth are not seeing their wealth grow in the same way.
India has effectively seen decades of rapid economic growth, and outside of the slowdowns related to the global financial crisis and the pandemic, this has been the case. Economic growth can bring prosperity to a country and lead large segments of its people out of poverty.
But I'm cheering for billionaires. We need their business acumen, and more importantly, we need their political connections, and we need their capital. As they get richer and richer, they can help lift the people of India out of poverty. And so I see that as a very positive story.